What's the time? 11:17. So declare the meeting open. Greg has to do another kitty care. No, we have to do it again.
I believe I've been advised that I need to do another one. So you're in luck. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kinakina te uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiaki ana te atakura, kia tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei, Māori ora. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah. Any apologies? Seconder. All right, it's up there. Seconder. Thank you. All those in favour? Yep. So there's feedback. Okay. So we're here for the sorry, confirm the agenda. First, a mover, sorry. Yeah, and Pamela, seconder. Yep. Mic on.
So bullet point 2, we seem to have this at every meeting that we are having, that the meeting may sit longer, blah, blah, which the policy says that we don't. And if we're continually putting it there, I'd suggest the policy is either a waste of time or that we're not, why are we deliberately trying to avoid policy? If it's just showing that the policy is nonsense. So I'll leave it at that and move on.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We can forward that query to Democracy Services for a response.
Been done ad infinitum on every the policy's waste of space.
Any disclosures of interest?
Yeah, I have some general ones. I don't think they're specific to the actual proposals, but I thought I'd put them on the table anyway. I'm a member of the Forest and Bird Society. I noticed there was one application relating to the Forest and Bird Society. I think as they come up, I may also, depending on the scenario, I might also make a comment. So I'll leave it at that for now. Yeah. Forest and Bird. Forest and Bird. Royal Forest and Bird Society of New Zealand, which is 100 years old.
Yeah, so let's move forward to discussing the funding decision.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. By way of recommendations, I'll reintroduce our team because we are on recording now. So, I'm joined by Patrick Whaley, our manager of Biosecurity Biodiversity, and Natasha Granger, our team leader Biodiversity, Nikki Ismay, who's our Biodiversity Partnerships lead, and Kate Pepper, our senior Biodiversity officer. So all of this team have been involved in the recommendations that you see before you today. Obviously, we've received a significant number of applications against the EIF fund, and the team have assessed these and ultimately landed on the recommendations that are here. One thing I do need to point out is that we have, at the last minute, found an error in one of the recommendations. It is recommendation 6 in the papers that you received. That was for $40,000. That has been adjusted because one of the estimates that form the basis for the recommendation included GST. All of these recommendations are exclusive of GST, so that adjustment has been made. That's the one that's highlighted on the screen for your awareness, committee members. But without further ado, I'll pass over. Are you happy, Mr. Chairman? I'll
Yep.
pass over to
you.
Patrick and team to kick us off.
Thank you, Greg. I'm assuming you've all read the report, and so if you would like me to go through that, I'm happy to. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer questions or take it as read.
Happy to have it taken as read. Yep, thank you. So,
And through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the committee's preference for considering these, so we have 9 recommendations, whether or not you want to run through each of those or simply open to questions on specific areas of interest in the hands of the committee.
Stu,
Is it possible to perhaps identify any outliers that people want to talk about? Then we know the ones that everyone's all good with, rather than go through each one individually.
Yep.
A suggestion, yeah.
is there anyone with specific ones that want to answer some questions about?
Thank you. Hello again. There's just a couple of bits here. Page 14, which was applicant 14. Just the funds are requested for this project. The funds requested for this project are for traps and bait stations. Just wondering what the bait and the bait stations is. Is it Brodifacoum or is it some other product? Poison.
Yep, hang on a minute.
Thanks.
Where is it? Which one? The Waikato Environment Centre one, is that the one? Page 14? Oh, New Zealand Land Care Trust.
Yes.
That-
New Zealand Land Care Trust.
Yep.
Oh, you might have it as page 9, yeah, it's
Can
confusing.
you give me the EIF number? It's on the top left under applicant, EIF
Yeah, 0036.
36, thank you. It's a different page number.
Yep.
So for the benefit of the committee, this is page 14 of your agenda.
Okay, Nikki.
So whilst that project is
14.
including toxins in the project, we are not recommending funding for the toxins, only for the traps and the bait stations.
Okay, thank you. And one more, and it's probably the same. 17 and 18, the funds requested for this project are for pest, plant and predator control materials, predator control materials, and the same on page 18, which is 0033. The funds requested for this project are predator control materials. Just wondering what those were, the materials.
So for the benefit of the staff, it's 0025 and 0033 are the 2 applications.
So-
Oh, you go.
For 0025, which is the WT Nichols Trust, it's double tap.
Okay,
And for 0033, there are no toxins being used in that project. It's only for trapping.
okay, cool. Thank you. That's it for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Any other questions? No.
Yeah, just looking at the 7 criteria and the 5 outcomes, can you explain why in the first one, Tongariro, which is, wherever it is, page 12, I think it is, 13, that's 17, and Waikato Environment Centre is, where was it? it 10? Yeah, 10 and 17. How, under the criteria, how is funding coordinators, which are not delivering work on the ground, comes within the criteria, whereas all the other ones are actually delivering something with the monies received? So what these two appear to be doing is funding a third party to seek more money. So where within the criteria does that come to be? Those two are to fund project coordinators. All we know there is that there's funded a coordinator, but we don't know what the outcomes are. Whereas by funding the recommended projects, if we do that, we know what the outcomes are likely to be. So we don't know. The investment is an unknown quantity.
So with the
I'm not
Zero-
worried about the individual projects. I'm just worried about why fund something that then goes on to fund something to try and get funds elsewhere.
they are two separate, that they're different. So it would probably be quite good for me to speak to each one. So 017, which is the Tongariro Natural History Society, that's actually an education program, and the coordinator is delivering educational material to schools in the Tongariro and Taupo area. And so that fits into the criteria under point D, which is to provide environmental education.
So, okay, so that's an educator. So you've got a coordinator here, which doesn't to me mean educator. So if you mean educator, can we actually have the word educator used? Thanks. I don't want to be too pedantic, but coordinator is not an educator and an educator is not a coordinator. So if you're meaning educator, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, they could be both, but if they are both, then please ensure, because that's easier to line up the criteria.
We try and use the language that the projects themselves use. And if you look at paragraph 3, it does say that this application is to seek funding for a Kairuruku Reo Māori role, which is a Te Reo Māori coordinator to work with Kura Kaupapa and Kohanga Reo to support the program from a cultural perspective.
In the greatest respect, I accept that Te Reo is a national language. I'm not proficient in it, and I don't understand what that means. So I'll be absolutely show my ignorance. I'm not familiar with the language, so to help me, I would appreciate some clarity, and I respect that there is a right to use it. But if you expect us to know, you're gonna have to provide some sort of glossary. I'm sorry. Okay, so I actually, on that point, Mr. Chair, is if the application says something, but it falls within the criteria, I would like to be shown in the supporting language, summary and staff comments, that it lines up with the criteria rather than you taking a leap of faith that we would know that. So, thank you.
yep, fair comment, no, thank you.
It's something that we can definitely take on
Yep.
board.
No, it would be helpful, thank you.
Could you take that down as an action, please? Yeah, thank you.
And that's then the same for the other one it's an education role in there.
So number 0010, the Waikato Environment Centre, is in fact a coordination role, and you're correct, it is to secure funding for smaller predator-free groups. It's actually, the role is much greater than that and has been, so it's a full FTE, one full-time employee, which has been funded up to about 0.6% by Predator Free New Zealand to provide support to the groups by way of education. They're seeking from us to extend that position to include funding. The reason why it fits into the criteria is because it still does build capacity and promote and contribute to sustainable management and enhance the environment. But I guess it is in an indirect way. So one of the things that a lot of these small predator-free groups through the region have identified is that they actually don't have the capacity or necessarily the experience to do the funding. They're busy on the ground actually doing predator work. And so there's an economy of scale in them having a qualified person to assist with that work.
No, I understand. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, can I just go back to number 17 or 0017? And just around, I'm just trying to get my head around what these kids are actually being taught. And I see it looks like there is some hands on the ground stuff, but the coordinator seems to be just engaging in Te Reo with local kids in Turangi. Is that correct? Just from reading the bottom paragraph, that seems to be just what they're targeting, just a teacher speaking Te Reo to engage with kids in Turangi.
So the role has several components, and one part of it is to extend the program to schools in Turangi. In addition to that, they will be providing Te Reo resources, which will be available to all the schools that they're currently working with. So it's quite a wide-ranging program already, with coordinators working with all schools in the Taupo area, and what they're seeking to do is to extend that into Turangi in addition to supporting all the schools with Te Reo resources.
And I see they have the backing of a number of other groups. Do we know what sort of funding they get through any other agencies?
Yes, I can provide that information, but I'll just need to take 5 minutes to get it.
You can come back, thanks.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, I just wanted to hark back to yesterday's discussion around the review. Remember the review that we discussed, and the key words that I tried to encapsulate that review in were leadership and leverage. And every one of the projects listed in this document has elements of both leadership and leverage. The leverage is critically important. That's about how we spend our money alongside other people. And in many of these cases here, what we're doing is like some co-funding or top-up funding or whatever in order to achieve a way bigger outcome. And the leadership and leverage is the mechanism to get us to the critical outcomes that are listed both in terms of the criteria that these guys are using and in terms of the 5 outcomes. I think it's important that we remember that. It's also important that we remember that pretty well in all of these cases, the majority of people who are doing the work are actually volunteers. So they are contributing funding in their own time and therefore money. And so a final commentary would be around just reflect back on Te Waka the other day. So what we were hoping from them is that they're going to attract more money and spread the message. These guys are doing it, but these guys are doing it from the bones of their backside. I mean, it's largely volunteers who are contributing. They're doing a great job, and we are being given an opportunity to give them some support. Not all of their support, because they often have other forms of funding. But in order to get to the scale that we need to operate, that's the way we're going to have to do it, because we don't have enough money individually, as an organization to fund these, and nor do the other funding agencies. So it's these collective approaches that are getting us to where we need to be. I guess the other comment I'd want to make too in relation to the project, in relation to rail, is that we've got to also remember that conservation and restoration in New Zealand is a bicultural activity. And what tends to happen often is that the emphasis is only on one half of the bicultural. You know, most of the activity is actually run through the lens of Pākehā New Zealanders. Well, if we're going to make transformational difference at regional scale, we've got to beef up the other side of the equation. And that is in effect what is happening in that proposal. It's not just about the particular event that happens in the preschool or wherever it is. It's about how does it all connect together to build an ecosystem which will support conservation and restoration across our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Totally agree. I think you should be sitting at the other end, selling it to us at times.
Just note, through Mr. Chair, Nikki has some figures to hand
All right.
in response to Warren's question.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for the project with the coordinator supporting Te Reo, the Ministry of Education is providing $82,600 towards the project. Bay Trust is providing $79,700 and Contact Energy is providing $35,000. And we are recommending $40,000 across 2 years.
Thanks very much for that, Nikki. And going back to Bruce's point, that leverage aspect is hugely important for this, and certainly recognise that. And just like to also just to comment, not trying to pick these proposals apart and that sort of thing. You guys have done all the heavy lifting and working in that space. It's just for me having confidence around that our money's going into the right places and that sort of. It's the basis of the comments. Thanks.
Dean?
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to check those figures. Are they for the 0017 project? Because I see the total project cost is $71,000, but you were talking there about 82,035. There's obviously a lot more money coming into that project.
That's right.
We're not seeing the full scope of it here in the application. So is some of that money going towards the 71,000 to?
So projects are defined differently by each group, essentially. And so when they have come through to us in this case, the project is the coordinator. However, it sits in part of a much wider program of kids greening Taupō, and that project is worth $197,300.
Right, it may have. I mean, the only issue with this is it's the highest scoring at 90%, and that's where some of the confusions come in here. It may have been useful to put that it was part of a bigger project and 100, you know, so just to add context. Otherwise, it looked like a small coordinator's role was getting the highest score, which may mean that everyone applies for coordinator's roles and doesn't do possum control in future. So, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clyde, got a question?
Just that's, you probably just said it, but I was daydreaming. 71,000 total project cost, right? Is that for this particular project? That's the 0017. And then did you mention 82K from Contact and the other guy's 79 and then 35? Is this what? Yeah. So is the total project 195 or was it 71? Sorry if you've already answered that.
So it is actually stated in the document, but it's probably worth just recapping that each of the applicants in the application form are asked to say how much their project is worth in total. And sometimes they define their projects differently. So they may define a
For
project.
each application.
Yes. So one applicant might consider their project to be as they have in this case, just the coordinator, whereas actually the project is much wider than that. So this coordinator sits in a project which is Kids Greening Taupō, where they're actually doing a lot more work, but they have defined the project as just the coordinator. So in fact, the project is worth 197,600, I think it was, 197,300. And I guess it would be
And the rest of,
perhaps useful for us to redefine the way that we present that to you.
and the rest of that's funded then, is it?
So there's 82,600 from the Ministry of Education confirmed, 79,700 from Bay Trust, and 35,000 from Contact Energy. And as Councillor Clarkson said, there will be additional funding in the form of volunteer labour, which there is a cost associated with that, but not one that is borne by any organisation.
And I just wonder also about the terms of reference for the funding, because it seems we as a council, so-called core business, we're funding more and more into communication. You know, this is like a coordinator to speak another language as opposed to results on the ground and trees growing and possums being caught. That's just a point that I'd like to make there. The other thing is, so just looking at the weighting, the scores, if we slide down, there's a couple of scores. There's one at 75.7, one at 77.1. 77.1, which is actually higher than the bottom one approved. It's got a higher score than, so 0024, if we're looking at the scoring system. I just wondered why did that one that 0024 out trump 0016 as an example?
I can explain that. So this is an education project, 0028, which is Kinloch Kindergarten. And so we, one of the assessors came from our education unit, and there was an anomaly where they actually scored quite a bit higher. When we went through the moderation process, we had a good look at the project, and it really didn't align as well as many of the others to our outcomes and priorities. So we kept the score so that we had full transparency. However, we deemed that there were other projects that were better aligned with council's priorities.
And just one last thing, how do you class the quality of applications each year? Pretty good. Most people meet the criteria, most of the applicants.
I can probably only speak to this year, and out of the 33, we only had one ineligible. We had a very high calibre of applications, and there are many good projects which are missing out based on the fact that the demand outstrips our availability of funding.
Okay, thank you.
You have questions, Hugh?
No, I don't really have any questions. Look, just some comments, I suppose. And I think that question you just asked in the response, Clyde, kind of sums things up here. I mean, I've been doing this just for 12 years now, and every year we're getting an increasing number of applications, yet we haven't addressed the budget shortfall. And on the back of some conversations we had yesterday and conversations that a few of us have been having with staff and amongst ourselves, I think we're well overdue to have a really close look at how we do this, because I mean, it's a really good thing that the community are wanting to get involved and work with us and do all this cool stuff. But I really feel sorry for you guys having to turn all these really high quality applications down. But at the end of the day, we only have so much money available, and for this particular round, we're bound to apply the criteria that we've got. So yeah, look, it is what it is. But so, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to move. I'm not hearing any specific serious concerns with any individual application. So I was going to move that that the applications 1 to 10 that have been approved be approved, and that the 11A to W be declined. Noting our comments that have been made around the committee that we acknowledge the really good quality here, but at the end of the day, we've got a limited pool of money and we have to do what we're going to do. But yeah, I do think this meeting also needs to note that we're looking to review this process, and we all in these times of austerity have to perhaps think about where we find some more funds from, because we are a key player in that interface between the community, mahi, and what we're doing here. So yeah, I'll move, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. So I've already put forward a motion. Does that motion, where does that sit? Does it come before this one from Stu?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is, so it hasn't been formally put yet. I also understand that it's an independent motion of these recommendations. I'll test that with the councillor, whether that's my understanding.
Yeah.
So just to explain further,
I think I was going to test it prior to the decision here, but as long as we can put it, so if this goes, because there's so much work gone into it, et cetera, and we've gone over a few of the points, Mr. Chairman, so I can still put that for after this motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe so. And just looking, William, if there's an additional recommendation over and above what's up on the screen.
I've got a motion that I want to put, and I've given notice of putting that motion. And it's more pertaining to where we're going from here into the future. So perhaps we can address this now, but I just want to make sure that by going through this, that I don't lose the opportunity to present that motion, which I've already notified.
The motion will be put up on, the motion will be bring to get to it and discuss that in a meeting. That motion.
So it's about the order.
Essentially, I think Clyde's got a greatest chance of success if it goes after what we're doing today.
Yep.
Than before.
Yep.
Because it will slam it shut on you.
I agree. So I think we'll deal with that after and Noel's motion that he's got as well. After the
So the point
Recommend
being
this
that
one.
I just wanted that motion to be presented.
yeah, thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, I just wanted to second the motion that's been put and observe that the review that was undertaken and was discussed yesterday provides a good platform for the sorts of revision or, further work that might need to be done before next year's round. So I'll second the motion that Councillor Kneebone has put.
Thank you. So all in favour? Aye. Opposed? It's quiet. Passed. So can we go to Clyde's motion now?
Right. Can I just briefly speak to that?
Yep.
Sure.
Can you?
So let's bring
it's
it up.
coming.
What I've got here is, and we'll see how it comes up there, that council, when undertaking the review of the NHPP policy, consider determining qualifying applicants for these grants by way of lot. Now, the reason I wanted to look at this is because I'm concerned, as the staff have pointed out, there's a lot of good applicants, applications out there that aren't getting a chance, aren't getting a go at money simply because they might be just slightly missing out on the waiting, or for whatever reason, it could be timing. But I think that good community projects should all get the chance to have some sort of funding going into the future. So I just wanted to raise this to let the community know that some of us, I think, are concerned about who's being funded Or what areas, for example, when I'd like to see a fairer system? Thanks.
I have a mover and a
Oh,
seconder.
oh, We have clarification of what does by lot mean?
Well, so for example, we've got 32 qualifying applicants. They would go into a hat, if you like, and they'd be drawn one by one. And when the budget is met, that would be the end of that round. All it's looking at is giving all qualifying applicants an opportunity to be funded. In any case where they may not have an opportunity.
My concern is that when we go through some of these ones in the notes, it says this one doesn't meet the criteria, or this one's applying for radio telephones, or it's already get funding from somewhere else. There's quite good rationale on some of these for declining them. And if we do it by lot, they would.
So they wouldn't qualify.
So what are the qualification processes then? Because otherwise we're back to your 7 points again. I mean, at the moment it's done by score, and so these have got a lower score. Do we have to mean that everything that gets over 80 is suddenly in the lot? It needs more clarification.
Yeah.
So we can build into this that it is discussed. See, here we are. It's a case of just showing that there's interest in being in a more. It's not like it's unfair. It's just fair, more fair way of people in the community applying for these grants of actually having a chance of getting it. So there's still a qualifying process. For example, out of the 33, 32 of them meet the criteria. So they meet, if you were looking to buy cell phones, you wouldn't meet the criteria. So it's assessed, they're all assessed, but the point being, every year it's the same thing. There's a lot of repeat funding going on year. And it's a fairer way of getting community groups around the region access to some funding where they might otherwise not have a chance.
I'm just confused by this, because if I put in an application and I'm wanting to be paid $200 an hour for my labour, and I happen to win the lot, I get it, even though I'm really not a good. And that's my concern with this, is that if you wanted to tweak who gets in, you might say that someone who's applied 1 year shouldn't get a grant the next year, and that leaves it more open. But those are in the criteria you'd set down. Sorry, that's.
Warren, Warren's next. Let the discussion happen. Okay.
So look, I've got to go. I know where you're coming from, Clyde, and I appreciate sharing the rationale behind this before. I think what Ben's saying is that on its own, this is a bit risky. It needs to be part of a process of how we allocate funds, which is, I think, is what you're saying. I think it needs to be more than happy for this to go into the mix of all the things that we need to consider as part of the review process, because we have to have a review. Because if you guys are going to say to me, hey, we're going to keep the EIF fund capped where it is now, and we're just going to add this on to the criteria, then there's no way I'll support it. But if you're saying to me, we're going to have a look, we need to have a look at the budget, we've got too many applications, not enough money, we've got to review the whole process of how we allocate this because it's getting harder and harder for staff, then I'm fine with having this put into the mix of what a better allocation process could look like. But on its own, I'll struggle to, because at the end of the day, we know we've got to have a review. So trying to preempt the review with this on its own, the review is going to override anyway. So it's kind of.
Yep. Lloyd.
If we look at the recommendation, it says when undertaking the review, of the policy, natural heritage policy, we consider determining successful applicants by way of lot. So it's considered. So what my point is, I'm just raising that this needs to be looked at. I'm not suggesting that it's done. We're not making a decision on it. We consider it and we come up with some ideas on perhaps a better or more equitable way of getting other groups successful results. So it's about considering it along with probably a lot of other things. So that's all I'm looking for today. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, I think I get the sense of where you're coming from, Clyde. But on its own, I don't think this is the way to do it. And because, review process will require a revision to occur. And I think there'll be an opportunity at that stage to consider a wide range of ways of improving the system, which is clearly what your motivation is. And in particular, the thing that has crossed my mind more than once, and I think I may have even said it the other day at the other workshop, was the notion, for example, of a new entrant category to make sure that people who are first time up get a different pot of, you can segregate the funding out. You can segregate the funding out and you can have a smaller category there, where you have a bit of money attached to it for new entrants. So look, I mean, on its own, I can't support the motion. I understand where you're coming from, but I think the time for us to have that discussion is when the revision, which is a consequence of the review, is underway. So I would leave it for now. I can't support it today, but I understand exactly. And I think the new entrant one is probably one of the biggest issues of all. How do you break into the fund?
Well, and look, I get where Clive's coming from and support the intent of what he's trying to do. And I think for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Clive, the issue is there's 33 applications. Some are not recommended because they don't meet criteria. So not all 33, one's excluded because it doesn't meet and the others, there are some reasons why they shouldn't. So the ones that get through the sieve and qualify, whatever number there is, rather than the current rating of the highest going down the percentage, and when the money runs out, we cut off there, is that if there were more than, basically, if there's 25 that qualify, putting all those 25 up and balloting as an option. So I'm absolutely in support of looking at better ways and more equitable ways to disperse this fund. Stu makes a good point about there not being enough money. And that's why I'll repeat again, that's why I'm looking for a redistribution of funds rather than seeking more money through rates. And so that's why I support the concept of what Clyde's trying to get to. And if it essentially, I think my next proposal actually steps back a bit further and says, take it away and look at the wider issues of biodiversity and biosecurity and how it's dealt with within council. So coming back to this, I'm open to options, whether ballot's the only option. So I think if it was to convey a message that in the review, anything that actually passes the barrier should actually be able to be considered rather than just on a scale, top one, down, and therefore, bang, end of story. So I support the concept of what Clyde's trying to achieve. Thank you.
Is that what you're saying, eh? Yeah. So it sounds like, have you got it, Pamela,
Just if I can, Mr. Chair, just I suppose wanting to totally understand what you're getting at, Clyde, and I understand the desire, and I'm hearing it echoed to look at the way we do this. Look at the way, the policies that sit behind the way we allocate funding alongside whether or not there is an appetite to increase availability of funding. So I totally support the review that you're asking for. Just in terms of this motion, I would say that this sits outside the tours of this committee. Because if you look at this committee's ability to recommend, it is not with regard to a policy setting. That would be, policy setting happens within strategy and policy. So I don't believe, and I'm not a democracy services expert, but I don't believe this motion sits within the tours of this committee. However, this committee can certainly note the discussion and possibly, I don't know if it would be an action point or if it just is a noting that this committee has a desire to ensure that the review is fulsome and that we take into consideration various methodologies of how we might go through our selection process. I think to determine a selection process or recommend a selection process with no paper supporting the analysis of what that would mean, I think would be slightly short-sighted. So I would just like this committee to make the note for particularly strategy and policy that when this review is undertaken, that consideration is given to how we distribute the funds that we have available.
If I could just make a recommendation to the committee, I recommend that maybe we adjourn for maybe 10 minutes while I confer the rest of the democracy team. So if you just all bring your motions towards me, I can just confer them with my colleagues and in terms of reference to see if we can put forward these recommendations. So I just recommend that we maybe adjourn for 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I might support that, but I don't agree with the chair, not you, the other chair, at the moment, because this committee can make any recommendation, council, because we're not actually determining the policy here. So council would direct it to the strategy and policy. I do believe that this committee can make a recommendation to the council or something. But I'll go back to my earlier words, is that, we need to step back and look at the review and take it on board, but support the concept. So however it's done, I still believe that the motion could be done. So anyway, happy to leave it to others and then we can have the argument a bit further, maybe.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
There you go, Warren.
Thank you. I'd just like to confirm that we're talking about the EIF piece of the natural heritage for one. And then the other thing, just looking up the powers of the ICMC, we do have considering and distributing funds from the Environmental Initiative Fund and Natural Heritage Fund for applications requesting up to 1/3 of the annual planned funding in any one financial year. Noting those requesting council funds of more than that level are to be recommended to full council by the committee. That's. Well, we're talking about how we distribute those funds, are we not?
Council, sir, on how the matters in which we are to deal with it are changed. So it's our business that we're asking council to change or consider changing. So I believe Clive's within his rights to make this recommendation.
Yeah, this committee can, if the committee is voting on something that is outside the committee's terms of reference, and it'll just be noted as a recommendation for council and not as a resolution passed.
So once again, it's just an opportunity here. We're on topic, and it's an opportunity to make this. It's for us to consider, and so I'd like to, unless Noel had something he was going to add, but I'd like to still put it because it's only about determining successful applicants by way of lot, because at the moment we're not doing it that way. We're doing it by staff recommendation, and we all agree. And so this is just an alternate way of putting it. That's just I'd still like to put the motion. If I have a seconder. You're not?
There's no secondary as yet.
So just to be clear, you wanted this, what's just typed in red there, you want that added to the whole resolution on the on what we're all voting. So like,
That's, yeah, the other one's, yes, yeah,
This is separate.
yeah, this is a follow-on. Yeah, thank you, William. So I guess the chair could call for a seconder. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to support what our chair was telling us. Our regional council chair is that a note relating to investigation of a broad range of methodologies is acceptable, but I cannot support a specific determination as in this motion. It's just too narrow and sort of cuts off options. So I think the wording that was being proposed by our chair over there is
Yeah.
really where we should be.
Okay.
So Clyde, are you willing to?
Consider alternates.
Okay, thank you. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes then. Thank you.
Did you know